We are both autism and behavior consultants, and we also have a ton of experience helping potty train a bunch of kids. So we're here to talk to you about some strategies. So I'm going to go ahead and share a PowerPoint. And I use this one because sometimes with our kids, it can feel really complex. So that's why I just loved this picture, because I feel like sometimes figuring out our kids and making it a positive experience for them, it kind of feels like calculus. So this is Potty Training 101. We're going to offer a bunch of different strategies. So you're going to kind of have to pick and choose what's going to work best for you and your child. So we kind of have an agenda. We're going to get through a lot of stuff in a short period of time. We only have an hour, and I definitely want us to have some time at the end to work on some open discussion and questions and problem solving, because that's really where we need to spend our time. So I'm going to run through a little short presentation. We'll talk a little bit about visual supports for potty training. So that might be something that you're interested in, and we can give you some ideas of how to get those visual supports. And then we'll kind of package it all together with an open discussion and problem solving at the end. Okay. So we're going to kind of go through some introductions. This is really helpful for us to know is kind of your name, your child's name and age. So toilet anxiety. So this is pretty common for our kiddos. Toilet training is not easy. It puts a huge amount of pressure on everyone. And I just want you all to kind of do yourself a favor and kind of just get all that stuff off your back that, your neighbor potty trained their, 2-year-old in 2 days and all of that, and family members' judgment and everything like that. I want you all to let that all go, because when you're anxious, your child's going to be anxious. And so the whole idea behind this is that they're not going to be scared or, view pottying as being a negative experience. Like, that's the number one thing that we want to do. We want pottying to be a positive experience because they're going to be doing it for the rest of their life. And I know you all don't want 10-year-olds in diapers. Like, we want to get our kids potty trained. So, and just remember that your child is unique and will develop these skills on their own time. So sometimes kids take a little bit longer to potty train. I personally have a child with autism, and it took about 2 years for her to get fully potty trained, in which she could initiate and tell me when she needed to go potty. So sometimes that track is pretty long, but just know that they're going to do it and they're going to become successful at it. So if you're just getting started, some of you said you're just getting started. So one of the first things that I work with families to do is just help them understand when they're wet and they're dry. So even those kiddos that aren't really recognizing when they're wet in underwear, it's a good time to be very animated, like, wet. Oh, it's wet. It's dirty. Let's go fix it. So that's a great way to start really identifying those concepts for your child, because sometimes they're not identifying those concepts yet or understanding them fully. And you can also pair it with a picture. So some of our kids are very visual learners. So pairing it with a picture, like sometimes we'd be like, wet, yucky, oh, let's go change. So that can be really helpful. I always tell families to move the diaper changing into the bathroom. So that is usually, if your bathroom allows it. I know some of our bathrooms are super tiny and you're like, there's no way we're doing that. But if your bathroom allows for it, moving the diaper changing into the bathroom, just to let them know, like, this is where this business happens, is being in the bathroom. So even if we're not sitting on the potty, we're still gaining comfort of being in the bathroom for something other than just bathing. And of course, modeling, if you're comfortable with it. So parents and siblings, sometimes preschool classrooms, you got a lot of models in the preschool classrooms as well. So that's a great way to teach. I know sometimes we have to reteach a little bit when we teach boys, especially to pee standing up first, and then we have to teach them later to sit to poop. So sometimes we have to go back and backwards chain, kind of teach them those differences. So those can be a little challenging. And then read, talk, watch. There are so many books, apps. I'm going to go through some of the apps that I really prefer, and I've had great success with kids. So really kind of getting a variety of learning styles. Some of us learn really well from reading books. Some of us learn very well from being talked to, and some of us need more visual, concrete examples that can be found in an application. So finding out what works for your kiddo best and capitalizing on that. And then start sitting on the toilet if they're motivated to. So, and we're going to kind of go through some equipment and some things that you might think about and consider as you're embarking on this toilet training experience. So it's okay if they're resistant. We usually get some resistance at first, So if they sit on it for 1 second, good job, you sat on the potty. So not having them sit there for long periods of time to get started. We want to build comfort and we want to make it positive. All right, you have anything to add, Florien?
Just unmuting. Sorry about that. No, that was great. You covered everything. We think a lot alike. Everything I would have said.
Another thing to do is potty playtime. So sometimes having some dolls sit on the potty, putting the diaper on the doll in the bathroom, those types of things. Making a potty. So this is really important. So we all do stuff in the bathroom, right? Like we used to read the newspaper, but a lot of adults now look at their phones when they're on the potty. So thinking about that, like kids need something to do as well. So making like a potty box, they call it a reinforcer box with some relaxing sensory toys. So like squishy tubes, those pop tubes, oil and water bottles. Those are super fun. Those glitter bottles that you can watch, or the oil and water toys, glitter wands, bubbles, kaleidoscopes, electronic toys. Some families use the iPad during that time. It's a highly reinforcing activity and it gets you to sit for a little while, just like an adult. So think of yourself, like, what do you need to relax to go to the bathroom and have a bowel movement? Your child probably needs something pretty similar to that as well. So thinking those relaxing thoughts and keeping it positive.
I do have, I'm going to just add 2 things there, if that's okay. You mentioned the iPad, and I wanted to share that I often find the iPad to be one of the things that's most relaxing to children. I think they're not stressed then. They're usually like pretty focused. So I like the iPad idea quite a bit. And the other thing is I've had families find some really nice dolls on like Amazon and other websites that if you type in like doll that pees, like they actually come with little potty chairs and you fill them with water. No, there's like all these things. And so sometimes that really helps some kids. It's kind of cute. And for some children, that's helpful.
Yeah, the little baby alives, I think is what they're called. Yeah. Oh, cool. That's a good idea, Florien. Okay, so I always go through the checklist with families. So this is a good checklist to think about. So, when we're first starting potty training, like checking the diapers regularly to see how long they're going without being wet. Because sometimes the physiological process of holding the urine doesn't happen till a little later for some kids. So staying dry for at least 2 hours is a good indication that they're physiologically ready to start potty training. If they try to undress or dress, that's great indication they're ready to potty train. And this is a big one, they're hiding. So they're sensing when they're needing to go to the bathroom. It's a great indication that they're ready to potty train. And definitely that comfort around the toilet and sitting on the toilet is just so important.
And again, I'm going to jump in if that's okay. This is kind of how we roll. So one thing about the dressing that I would add is oftentimes people ask me, like, if their child has to be able, like, to pull down their own pants and take them off or pull them up and stuff, and they really don't have to. The actual, if you will, skill of urinating on a toilet is different than all that motor coordination. So I don't see that as a barrier. You just might need to help them with that piece. And then the other thing is, if you have a child who's more like 4.5 going on 5, and they can hold their urine for an hour versus 2 hours, then you might, in some cases with older children, have to go back to even an hour and then just, kind of track it more to see. But 2 hours is pretty, what I say, pretty average. That's what we look for. But once in a while with older kids, it's hard to go more than an hour for some kids.
Yeah, definitely. Some of us have smaller bladders.
That's
I know
right.
that. Every time I go on a road trip with my husband, I'm reminded of that. So, but if they're demonstrating any of these, so they don't necessarily, like Florien said, like have to stay dry for 2 hours. But if they're demonstrating any of these skills, it's a good time to start working on the routine of potty training. Okay, so I always do an inventory checklist with my families. So definitely comfortable on the toilet. I know a lot of us use those little toddler toilets. That's usually not where I start. I usually like to start on the toilet, but if your child's more comfortable on the toddler toilet, you can totally use that and it's fine. Just having an idea and maybe brainstorming with your service coordinator or teacher about like making those steps to being on the big kid potty, because we eventually do want them to go on the big kid potty. So typically our kids are super small, so they definitely need an insert. I like inserts that don't move. So if your insert is sliding on the toilet, that might be really uncomfortable and be scary. So if my toilet seat was sliding while I was trying to use the bathroom, I'd definitely feel uncomfortable using the toilet. So making sure it fits pretty snugly. I'm going to show you some examples. And then footstools as well. So footstools are super important. It's good for stability for them to have their feet on a footstool while they're going to the bathroom. And it also builds independence of them getting on to the toilet by themselves. So by the time my kiddo was like about 1 year into potty training, she was able to get her footstool, put it by the potty, and put her potty seat on independently. So, and then sometimes, I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute, but sometimes they need handles on the side of the toilet seat. So they do make little toddler toilet seats that fit inside that have little stairs and then handles on the side, just for that security purpose. Definitely watching the temperature of your room, especially during those Pacific Northwest cold winters. It's really hard to relax in a cold room and use the bathroom. So just watching the temperatures of our bathroom to make sure it's not too hot, too cold, just a comfortable temperature. And we talked about this already, is using that potty box. So having like what's reinforcing for your kid at that moment. And remember, that changes. What's reinforcing for us on Monday may change on Wednesday. So being flexible within your ideas of what's reinforcing and what to put in there.
Do you see someone needed admitting?
Yeah, I let him in.
Thank you.
All right. So these are some ideas that I have. So this is what I was talking about. This one right here that has the steps in the handle. That's a really nice one. These ones are pretty low cost. I think they're generally between like, $20 to $30 to purchase any of these toilet seats. This one's a little more expensive. You find these at like Home Depot or your hardware store, where they have the insert already built into the toilet seat, which is pretty cool. Makes it, so you're building independence. I really like the Bjorn ones because they have the rubber on the bottom that keeps them from slipping. And they can actually ratchet down to the toilet as well. So I really like those Bjorn ones. And this one also has the rubber on the bottom, and it has the handles on the side. The boys typically want that little shield right there. So that's really important for our boys. So we don't end up with urine in our bathroom. So, you know, there's a whole step of teaching them how to sit on the toilet and then push it down as well. So that comes in as well. And of course, you can get it in cute little sets like Paw Patrol or something like that, which can be really motivating for some kids. All right. Anything to add, Flo?
No, perfect. All of these are my favorites as well.
Excellent.
They really are. They're great.
So I typically encourage everyone to potty train boys sitting down first. So some of you may have been like, oh, but I've already taught him standing already. So you'll have to do some teaching, like I said, around that, is teaching them how to sit on the potty. But typically, if we're just getting started with boys, I usually teach them or have their families teach them to sit first, because it's a lot easier to teach the opposite routine later on. Or the routine of standing.
Hey, you know, I have one other thought really quick. And so a lot of people do get those little toddler like potty seats that are separate, like you were describing previously. So oftentimes families ask me, when do you go from that to like the bigger toilet seat? And what I look for is how the child is positioned, like if they're comfortable physically. Because if it's a really short potty seat and their knees are up high, that's not going to be real comfortable. And then I've had kids with their legs really far out long. So if they're not like sitting in a comfortable position to urinate and have a bowel movement, then I really start thinking about moving to the, you know, your regular toilet with some of those kind of seats that you just showed.
Yeah, good point. And also, this is something I've experienced with some of the kids I've taught in the past, is sometimes they get up there and they're kind of lunging. And that's really telling me like they're not comfortable physically being on the toilet seat yet. So you might consider, you know, a smaller toilet in that case if they're really tiny. Because it can be hard to be on that big kid toilet right away for some little kids. So I've talked to you a lot about this, is just making a little reinforcer box. It's good to make it so these things aren't available all the time, so they kind of have some novelty to them. And then try to avoid activities that might excite them or keep them from relaxing on the toilet. It's hard to relax if somebody is singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Starry with you. That's something you really like to do. So you might consider doing something like that. On the flip side of that, sometimes when I'm first teaching them to sit on the potty, I might sing the ABCs if it's motivating for the child, just to get them to sit and be comfortable. We're not working on elimination. We are just working on the routine of sitting on the potty comfortably. We might sing the ABCs and be all done. So that's another strategy that you might consider. All right. I put the visuals in here. So I realized I meant to put them at the end, but I put them in right here. These can be really important for our kids. So these strips, you may have seen them before. Maybe your service coordinator has given, or your child's teacher has given you some of these. But breaking down, there's so many things that go into using the bathroom. Like there's so many things, and it's hard for kids to sequentially keep track of all of those different steps. And there's a lot of different areas of development that this touches on, right? We got the physical, we got the cognitive of understanding when we need to go to the bathroom, you know, so there's a lot of stuff that's kind of built into this. So we have these beautiful visual strips. So if you're interested in them, you know, holler or put it in the chat. Because Florien and I can tell your service coordinator and get them to you. We also have ones on wash hands. We have boy, girls. They come in a variety of different colors. So whatever would best fit your child and your child could identify with.
If you do put them in the chat, if you could tell if, like she said, like if it's a boy or a girl, that would be helpful. And that's both for the long strip. And then are you going to talk about what a social story is in a minute, a little bit about the I use
Yes.
Potty? Okay. But go ahead and put it in there. If you were someone who chose not to introduce yourself, I do need the name of your child so that I know who to get it to. So we already have these pre-made in some cases, and in other cases we have to make them, but go ahead and put it in the chat and I'm going to write them down as we go through the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Florien.
Okay.
And we also have the sequence strips on wash hands too. And we can also make them. So if your child's having like a really hard time coming from a really reinforcing activity, like playing outside, we could show them like, oh, you know, first potty, and then we'll come back and play outside. So it's a great way to show the first then, but we can also make strips that have like, when does potty fall into our daily routine? When are we going to go potty? So the first then boards are, some of you may be familiar with this. It's kind of like first work and then we get paid, right? We don't work for free, right? So kids are kind of the same way. Potty is not a reinforcing activity. It's, you know, play is so much better. So when you're thinking about making a potty routine, maybe, you know, offering a preferred activity afterwards can be a good payment to following that routine of going to the bathroom. So that's the first then boards. So we wouldn't switch it up, right? We wouldn't do the reinforcing activity first and then put potty second. So, right, we work and then we get paid. The other one that's really fun is the social stories. I've had a lot of kids have great success with social stories. And if you don't know what social stories are, they are books that are really individualized for the child. So it uses I, like in first person, like I use the potty. So this one, it just kind of breaks down the step by step, just like on the strip. So you can read it, you know, on the potty, or if you're just getting used to the routine and introducing the routine, you can use it, you know, reading it at nighttime or something like that, just to get them used to the idea of going to the bathroom. So that's what a social narrative is. And you can also get your service coordinator to individualize it for your child. So if you are doing a really consistent, you know, thing afterwards, that is kind of like payment for going potty, like they can build that into the story and you can talk about it and things like that. So that's a great way for kids to learn. Not all kids learn from books though, right? So especially in this technological age that we live in. So there's also Potty Apps. So these are some of my favorite Potty apps. So you're gonna have to jot it down, which ones you really, really like. My child loved Elmo. So Elmo was kind of her sweet spot was Elmo. So this one is kind of, you know, he speaks about going to the potty. It's super positive. There's actually a video of Elmo learning to use the potty that you can find at the library. If some of you still have DVD players, or maybe you can find it on YouTube or something like that. But this one comes with an interactive story, some theme songs, and a few games, and a progress chart if you're into that. So that's the Elmo Potty app. Daniel Tiger is one of my favorite PBS shows just because he's so routine based. He's really focused on routine. And he also is like, he's a good self-talker, I have to say. It's just like, he's like, I went potty, woohoo, you know, so he's always so excited about doing all these routine activities that don't seem very exciting in daily life. So I love Daniel Tiger. So it has games, it looks like it has like different things for them, but it goes through each step of the pottying. So, you know, flushing, wiping, washing hands. So these are great ones. Potty time this is the 2 little hands, which is the signing time. So this one is like you get a call to go potty. So some of us need that. They also make these potty watches too that go off every hour to hour and a half. That just kind of reminds your preschooler or your toddler that it's time to go potty. So some of our kids like that. They don't like the adult telling them. So sometimes it's better if somebody else tells them. So that is that Potty Time app. And my all-time favorite is See Me Go Potty. So and I think Florien knows this one too, especially for our kids on the spectrum. It does cover pee and poop. It's super concrete, and it can be personalized for your child. So it'll have their name, their hair color, skin color. Like it tries to get it so it's close to your kid as possible. And it's very concrete. It goes through all of the steps, and my kiddos love it. So this one, I think it's $2. You can get it on the Apple Store. It's on Android as well. So this one's my all-time favorite. Okay, so we went through the apps. We're almost through all this stuff. A lot of you have talked about this, that when, diapers, of course, we don't feel the wet. I think a lot of you understand that. It's like, when we're ready to go into potty training, like definitely feeling the wet is best, and cleaning up the mess too. It is messy. You might want to use some of those, the rubber bottoms that, go over the thick training pants to kind of minimize the mess. Summertime's a great time to potty train just because you can put rubber shoes on and stuff. It's really hard in the winter. So you get puddles in your tennies and stuff, and that's not so much fun. But those rubber shoes during the summer can get rinsed out. So the potty training pants are just a great way. And even though your child may not recognize it, that's a good time to just really kind of, use those incidental teaching to really be like, describe it to them and have them participate in the routine of cleaning up. Because eventually the routine of going to the bathroom instead is going to be more reinforcing than the routine of cleaning up.
I want to just add that the thing with the diapers and the commercial pull-ups is they're so absorbent that the child can't feel that they're wet.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge problem. And even some of the pull-ups are designed so the child doesn't feel it. And so, we want the child to feel that they're wet a little if they have an accident, so that they know that they had an accident. So that's just one of my thoughts on this slide.
So so it's a good time to say bye-bye to the diapers and move on to the big kid training pants. So good for you, for all you parents that have gone this route. You are ahead of the game on the theories on this. Okay, so yeah, definitely if your child's not disturbed by the wet, I'm not just saying like, oh, you just use incidental teaching. You might want to consider like tracking when they're wet. So usually if you track for about a week, you can get a really good idea of when they're eliminating and making a potty schedule. We call it trip training. And this is how my child learned how to use the bathroom, as trip training, because she was not initiating yet or anything like that. And we trip trained for a good 2 years until she was able to independently use the bathroom on her own and initiate on her own. So like I said, sometimes it's a long road to get to the end, but they'll get there with your persistence and positivity. Okay, so thinking about that, so this is a segue into trip training. So I call it the scientist method. It's what it is. So it's really for, you parents that love data and taking data. Some people really respond to this way because it gives you a really concrete time of when they need to go to the bathroom. So it's really simple. You kind of check your child's diaper every 30 minutes and you kind of note when they're wet and poopy. You analyze the data, like after a week, you can usually see some pretty predictable patterns when you do that. And then you create a timed routine schedule on that data. And just like those visual strips that we showed you that broke pottying down, we also have ones that can do your daily routine and you can add potty in there. And thinking about, you might want to alternate with some reinforcing activity afterwards.
You mind if I add to that, Julia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually use the scientist method quite a bit. I do like data, but I do it because I have parents who call me and they are taking their child to the bathroom every half hour. The child's getting really frustrated and, doesn't want to go in the bathroom anymore. And so in that kind of case, what I'm thinking as I am talking to the parent is the child's probably being taken to the bathroom very frequently. At times they really don't have to go. So that's a really good time to kind of track. It also allows, like Julia said, you'll find a pattern and maybe you just see the patterns in the afternoon and the morning is more random. And so then you just focus in on your potty training on those targeted times in the afternoon and you don't worry about it in the morning and stress yourself out and the child out. So there's some real advantages in some situations to doing that. And then if you could I go ahead and I'll go ahead and mention.
Yeah, I love it.
So if I find a child who's say urine is wet, the diaper's wet often around 2, about 1:40, 1:45, I'll maybe give them some salty snacks. So maybe they like saltines or goldfish crackers. I've had kids eat anchovies, bacon. The reason I'm doing the salt is because I want them to drink a lot of fluid to get their bladder full. That way, when I put them on at 2 o'clock, their bladder will feel fuller and and because it's a high frequency time and the patterns that we tracked, there's a higher probability that they'll pee on the potty. And so the mom, I was looking at my names, I think it was Amber, where your child didn't urinate. This might be a good thing to do for your child because he's 4 and he can poop in the potty. He may not be feeling a full bladder. So if you know when he is wetting and then can give him more fluids ahead of time and put him on the potty at those times, you might have more success. I don't know, but it's worth the try.
Good point. Yeah, I forgot about the salty snack.
Only if they're not only if they're not going to drink a lot. The idea is to, to increase the thirst so they have a full bladder.
Absolutely.
That's the idea.
And that kind of bleeds into the surfer method, which is kind of the laid back parent method. This is what I did. Was just kind of structuring when food and drink was offered and going to the potty soon after my child had food or drink. So you take them 5 to 10 minutes after they have food or drink. And if they don't have a successful, and then 5 minutes later, then oh, next time I'm going to take them 15 minutes, a little later. So it kind of gives you an idea. So you can play it that way as well. But Florien will talk to you about the scientist method. It's a pretty good way to really get some trip training down so you get a lot of success. It is the best way, I would have to say. So yeah, and also, I label it, when I feel like I need to go to the bathroom, or I did with my child, just saying like, I'm having that full feeling like I need to go potty. So just kind of tuning into the physiological feeling, labeling it for your child. So they're able to understand it over time.
And Julia, I want to do a time check. It's 4:48.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email address and your email address.
Perfect.
In case we don't have time to do problem solving, people could email us. Are you okay with that, Julia?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that while you're talking.
We're almost done too. So I just want to talk about incentives, especially those, potty charts. There's some really fancy potty charts out there. I always say try those intrinsic ones, those positive adult attention. That's where I really like to capitalize on this. So, you know, potty parties, good job. We're going to have a dance party or something like that. So, something that's not tangible, like extrinsic, maybe something that's intrinsic if that motivates your child. But sometimes that doesn't. So you can also think about, you know, the first we're going to go potty, then we're going to get paid. So first we're going to do the potty, and then we're going to do a favorite activity. And definitely avoid incentives that take a long time to accomplish. So not like a week full of going to potty before you get some big incentive. Try to think small and immediate rewards, because not all of our children have that long picture of being able to hold that together to get that incentive at the end. It's really the consistency is key. So the potty training, so this is a good one. I actually think Florien does a great job talking about this, but we've talked about a few of these things already. Is just potty training boys sitting first and then teach standing later. It's okay if you already did it the other way. We'll, you know, problem solving around that. When they won't poop on the potty, I always consider, is it constipation or attention? So are we having trouble, you know, actually pooping on a regular basis? Or is it like, I don't want to sit for a long enough time? Usually our kids want to play. They don't want to sit on the potty for a long period of time. And when my child had an accident in in her underwear, I would always dump the poop in the potty with her watching to show her where the poop went. And using those kind, positive words when they have an accident is good. But Florien, do you want to talk a little bit about the diaper? Because some of our kids are very attached to their diaper. Like they will not poop unless they have a diaper on. So this might be something that you all are experiencing.
Yeah, so I experience this a lot with children, and often they will be in their diaper. The parents will have them on the toilet sitting maybe even for 5 minutes and nothing happens. And then they put the diaper back on the child, and child hides behind the couch or in a closet, or just like scoots down and has a bowel movement. And so one of the things that I sometimes encourage parents to do is, I know this sounds odd, but it actually is something that has worked and can work, is I have them kind of figure out where about in the diaper the bowel movement is landing, and I mark kind of about where it is. And in future diapers, you can cut a hole in the diaper for the bowel movement to come through. So it would be a big hole. So this, in that case, the child is wearing the diaper on the toilet with a hole in it for the poop to come out into the toilet. And then once I have that happening, then I can fade out you know, the diaper. And honestly, I do the same tracking. If I know they're going to poop after dinner every night at 6:30, then that's the time I'm going to focus on this. It won't be all day long. It's just going to be, again, those high frequency times that the child may have a bowel movement. So, and if your child does have issues around constipation, I really encourage you to talk to their pediatrician or whoever you know, the child's caregiver is. A lot of kids do get prescribed Miralax. I don't know if you see that, Julia, but I do. Oh, yeah. And like a lot, you guys, like many kids are on Miralax. And so particularly if you have a child who has gastrointestinal issues or is a picky eater, their gut, right, isn't going to be processing food well, it's going to do it physically the same way, but it's not going to end up the same way. So kids end up often being constipated. And when you do something like Miralax, you don't just do it and then have them have a bowel movement and then stop until they get constipated again, because that really isn't healthy for the bowel. You want them on it for like an extended period of time. Most of the pediatricians recommend 6 months, and then they fade them gradually off. So they'll go to every other day or every 3 days, every 4 days until they're off the Miralax. But you've got to get the bowel tissue to be working in a healthy way before you can really totally fade them off the Miralax. So.
Awesome. This is one we spend a lot of time on. I feel like it's usually pretty hard for kiddos to poop not in their diaper. They get really rigid sometimes about it. So, but some of us have the opposite problem, right? That they'll poop on the potty, but not pee on the potty. So, but when they're not pooping, definitely thinking about it, is it constipation or attention, you know, or are we having that rigidity around pooping in our diaper? Okay. So we're rounding the end real quick, but I just want to put in there this thing about flushing. Some of our kids are really disturbed by the noise that flushing does, especially in public bathrooms. So try doing it outside, like once they wash their hands, do it while you're leaving, you know, flush the toilet and run away. You can make a fun game out of it, or you can also use some noise reducing headphones. And I want to put a little plug in here about the automatic flushers. I've had kids make huge regressions when the toilet flushed on them when they were sitting on it in a public bathroom. So I still actually carry Post-its in my purse so I can put it over that piece there, you know, where the sensor is. And then also draping toilet paper over those as well. So typically I say, you know, learn to use the potty where it's comfortable. So at home. So we don't want to push it out. You know, we're not going to go to McDonald's and use the bathroom right away, right? We want to learn to use the potty at home. You might consider using a diaper, going out into community activities to get started. And then, you know, as your child gets that routine down at home and you have some success, maybe you move to a community bathroom that you're familiar with. Maybe it's at speech therapy, or maybe it's at a restaurant that you regularly go to. So thinking somewhere where we have a little more comfort, not brand new. Okay, you can totally do this. Potty training can happen. You know, set up a routine, build on it as they get the hang of it, patience, keep it super positive, not punitive. That's like number one. And, you know, keep up that consistency. So that's my little presentation on potty training. I try to keep it short. So does anybody have some thoughts or questions that they would like to talk about?
I just wanted to thank you both very much. This was really helpful. And we had, of course, heard some of this from Natalia and others, but you put it all together very well. And I'd still be very happy to get a link of your PowerPoint or whatever, so you can go over it. And have a wonderful evening, and thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, we will definitely get that out. It should be in an email that'll come out, I think, in the Ursula takes care of that.
And I want to add, you might be interested in looking up this book. We have it. Natalia could loan it to you, or any of your service coordinators could loan it to you. I love it. I use it. I have one right here. I like it that much. It's called Toilet Training for Individuals with Autism or Other Developmental Issues by Maria Wheeler. It's great, but it also has a whole problem-solving section, like failure to urinate in the potty, failure to have a bowel movement in the potty, afraid of flushing, failure to wipe. The problem-solving section's phenomenal. So I'm going to type it into the chat, the title and the author for you. And we do have copies at the office that we loan families. Just ask your service coordinator.
Yeah, would you please let Natalia know that? I would greatly appreciate that, because she has actually given us these lovely pictures that you were just showing.
Oh, nice.
And so we have those, but I had not heard of this book.
Okay.
And is it a book that the child reads, or is it a book that
No, it's for adults, and it's very family friendly. It really is. And they give you examples throughout the whole thing. It's got pictures and all kinds of suggestions for all through the phases of potty training. And like I said, also suggestions for problems that arise. So any of you could ask your service coordinator for a copy. And Julie, I'm just going to take a minute and type it in.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
May I please ask one more quick question? I hope I'm not monopolizing the time here.
No,
I
sure.
saw in the web that there is some method wherein one can potty train a child in 3 days, like 72 hours. And it involves apparently not sleeping and taking the child to the bathroom every 15 minutes or I don't know what. And I was just curious, is that something that really works?
So like I said in the beginning, like kind of letting go of a lot of those ideas because, we don't want it to be a negative experience. So if somebody was taking me to the potty every 15 minutes, I might get really frustrated with them. So it really, like some parents have success doing that. So, I won't say definitely don't do that, but I would just, encourage you to think about the comfort of your child and, also thinking about making it a positive experience
You're
for
just
them.
cautioning me not to take any backward steps in the enthusiasm to get it done quickly, because then that would have to be repaired and that will take even more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of, I remember hearing from a lot of my friends about how they potty train their child at like 18 months and stuff like that. And, it was a longer road for my kid. And so I had to let go of a lot of, of those judgments and however everybody else did it. And just, really focusing on my child and realizing like, where her capabilities are, where is her comfort level, and how is she going to be most successful?
Got it.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just so people know, I just typed in the book title and the author.
Awesome. Yeah, we do have those. And I also have handouts as well. There's not 2 J's in my email address, just so you know. It looks like there's 2 J's in there, so don't do JJ. I'm J Rockwell with 1 L at uoregon.edu, and I have handouts on everything that I talked about today. And I have a ton of tips and things like that I can just email to you. They're really easy, like 1-pagers. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and send me a text or send me an email and I can send them out to you.
And we should look at what we each have. I have similar handouts too. So let me know. We might have the same, or they might be different. Yeah. We should connect. So I'm sorry, I thought it was J Rockwell. That was a typo. Sorry about that.
It is J Rockwell. There's just 2 J's.
Yeah, no, it was a typo. Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you all for showing up. I hope you learned something.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really
feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, I am going to stop.